This video is called To Assist, To Accept or Flee, or To Resist. Now, the arrow of Nigeria assisted the slave traders. Well, not all of us, I've talked about the Oracle in the past, how there was this woman who, it's a perfect example of feminism being a problem. She basically teamed up with a bunch of men who were small in stature, men who weren't as strong as the average Igbo, but who were more ruthless. You see, the Igbos had a pacifistic culture. They would settle disputes with wrestling and what have you, and they would practice with wooden swords and wooden helmets. It's similar to the story of Shaka Zulu with the Igbos, where they were peaceful people who settled things in less violent manners until warlike people came around and led them to war. So they had a pacifist culture. They also had a war culture. The highest thing you could be in Igbo culture was a transcendent hero, a warrior, which was pretty much without exception a man. Though you have people who would imply that there was some kind of female balance to the politics of Igbos, where women had their own sort of committee that could overrule the General Assembly on matters relating to women. And this was almost certainly done for the purpose of appeasing argumentative women. We all know how black women can be, rather than a logical way of doing things, much less a natural way of doing things. So let me first thing I'm going to do, step one, I'm going to show you what I've claimed in the past. I said in the past that my people were the victims of the slave trade and they resisted the slave traders. My village, my family, my extended family. It was the other Igbos and the Aro and the Abam, Ohafia, Ariba, and Ada, the allies of the Aro, who were the main ones taking the slaves from Biafra, from Igbo land, and the small tribes around it, the Ija and the etc. Ibibo, and there's a couple, I think it's the Ephraim or something. I'll get to that in a minute. Well, maybe I won't. I'm running out of time already. So, Herman Kolar, a German doctor who visited Biafra in 1840, noted that by the time the flintlock had become so common that even the inhabitants of Igbo land are beginning to lose respect for it. Yet firearms did not create the fear in opponents that the Cross River soldiers did. Father Lutz was in Aguilera at the end of the century, when the inhabitants fled their town in fear of an attack of the young men of Ada. He recalled that in the past, the Ada traveled across the land, killing all in their path. Small in stature and armed only with small cutlass, they swooped down on their enemies with the fury of a tiger. They cut off their heads, and which they put in a sack hung around their necks. When the sacks are full, they return in triumph to their own people. Page 71. Okay, so what can we learn from this? Well, this is the beginning of the slave wars. What happened at first is the Igbos were pacifists. They didn't want to fight. They were told, especially, the closer you are related to someone, the closer of a relative they are, the more it goes against, I forgot this female deity. I think it's Anna, this female deity who's in charge of fertility and the agriculture and the moral code of the land, according to the existing pagan Igbo culture of the time. So they did not want to fight with these people over who gets taken into slavery and sold to the white man. They want to put them and themselves in a path of kill or be killed. When it's your family and it's your village, they didn't want to do that. So some of the warriors stood behind, and a lot of people fled, which is what logically happened. And when this guy Herman Kolar was there at the end of the 1800s, end of the 19th century, he decided that excuse me, he recorded that they fled. So what do you know from this? Absolute proof that my village, well, not my village, I wasn't born there. You know, my parents, not my, well, my dad and my grandma's village, you know, my Igbo side of the family's village, were not, I repeat, not slave traders, but they were people that fled and people that resisted, period. And that was toward the end of the slave trade because, as you recall, the Civil War would break out in America. Slavery would come to an end. So, there was skirmishes, there was people fleeing. Exactly what you would expect from those who resisted and those who fled. So, my opponents would say some bitch shit, you know, and I'm dressed up right now. You know, I'm the top martial artist, not any of the blacks who sold the other blacks, not the white slave traders, no one else, me. An Igbo who descends from Ogalari is the top martial artist. I'm the one who stands against the New World Order, while all of you are cowards that bootlick or don't do anything or turn a blind eye. Okay, let's keep that in mind. Before you try to take the coward route, you know, what it was right now, I'll tell you. Right now, I'm the top martial artist. I'm standing in defiance. All you cowards aren't, so you can shut that down right now. Now, let's go to the... Also, keep in mind that a transcendent hero was worth more than a wrestler. A wrestler could also be a different kind of transcendent hero. Obviously not as transcendent or as great as someone who's in military combat. So let's go to page 20. The constant reality of potential raids from other areas encouraged the development of militaristic strategies and values, and valorous soldiers were rewarded with cattle, clients, and wives. Thus the king, chiefs, and other wealthy men would have wanted to attract into their service the most skilled soldiers in the society. These soldiers will then be used in raids or to repel the raids of others. The distribution of cattle to clients also spaced out the king's herd over a wide area, thus expanding his influence while protecting him from total losses from raids outside the kingdom. Outlying chiefs and wealthy men could then redistribute royal cattle to their subordinates, thus linking chiefs, headmen, and fighters to the central political authority. Cattle thus became central to notions of political legitimacy, a fact reflected in the spiritual belief in sacred cattle, which came to represent the wealth of the kingdom. So that is talking about the Angolans and the Kanani and what have you. The Kanini, rather. Okay. Reflexive honor was a cultural code demanding, this is, I believe this is page 54. Reflexive, let me make sure that right quick. I don't want to get the wrong page. I have a bunch of crybabies crying. No, it's not. Oh, no, I think that's page 30. Yeah, I remember, because I think I maybe might have time. Come on. No, it's not page 30 either. I don't know what page it is, but somewhere in the book. Reflexive honor was a cultural code demanding that a man whose honor was impinged mount a counterattack in order not to lose his honorable reputation within his community. Insults were considered a challenge, so on. Defend his reputation in cattle through the violent enforcement of honor. I don't really know why I took a picture of this page. There's stick dueling, cultural code of honor. I don't fucking know. I don't want to waste time on this. That is rather unfortunate. Anyway. Alright, so here we go. Elders, priests, war heroes, and other individuals cuts out the part. Basically, they exercised. They were the most respected people in the society, and it was somewhat of a democratic society. You know, this is rather, you know, this it's rather unfortunate, you know, but I could pretty much find that one for you if I wanted to right now. But I'm just gonna fucking skip to the next one. All right. In the other borderlands, however, where their non-Igbo neighbors' modes of conducting war could not be regulated by a shared cosmology, Igbo communities often developed fiercely martial cultures. This occurred most prominently in the northern, western, and southeastern frontiers of Igbo land, where the desire for achievement focused on a second type of war called Aga or Ogu Ebu Sibi Isi, the war in which it is impossible to kill and cut off the head. In the Cross River region, or where it is possible to kill and cut off the head. In the Cross River region, some martial societies, including the Oafia, Ada, and Abam, produce large numbers of highly skilled warriors who specialize in head hunting with machetes. These warriors were the products of militarization of their society, reflected in their gendered social hierarchies. For men in these societies, honor and class status were linked to martial valor, creating powerful social pressure on young men to develop into successful warriors. Male youths were not considered full men in the society until they decapitated worthy opponents with deft strokes called justified wars. These Ufiam or honorable warriors were predominantly men who had taken heads, although the rank could also be given to a male who had similarly killed a leopard. Ufiam alone could carry their machetes in leopard skin sheaths and wear Ufi, the color red. The rest of the males were branded Ujo, meaning coward, were considered to have failed to establish their masculinity and were barred from active participation in many activities of adult men. While women more often chose honor through their achievements in agriculture, trade, and motherhood, some women chose the path of warriorhood, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, you can imagine when a woman became a quote-unquote warrior, it was like, okay, you can fight pretty good for a woman. I don't think I have to explain that. We'll leave that at that. Bottom line is it makes a very strong distinction between men's roles and women's roles. Any balance in the society was more of an attempt to, you know, reconcile with the women, to appease them. And there was also, obviously, logically, the idea of where a man plays a part and a woman plays a part, and together they come together and they create a child. So that, in many cultures, is reflected in the religion and cosmology, is that you have, you know, a man and a woman, and they're both coming together to create things. And you have sickos who twist this and say, well, we all have a masculine and feminine nature, and they become bisexual and they twist everything and dual gender, and just they make a complete mess of it. When in reality, there is a role that each one of them plays, which is distinct. That's why one half is black and one half is white in the yin yang. There's two different roles and they work together. They complement each other, what have you. But should a woman have as much authority as a man? No. Does she have as much authority as a man? No. Even in Igbo culture, where you have some people twisting it, do women have as much authority as men do? No. So when you all get together and everyone is voicing their voice in a democratic Igbo society that existed a long time ago, you know, you had tons of male transcendent heroes, and then you had a bunch of bitches. Okay? Did these bitches magically have fucking as much of a say in society? And were they leaders? No. Were there meetings where women were excluded? Absolutely. You know, but I'm out of time now. I basically made my point. I didn't read everything I wanted to read, but basically elders, priests, and war heroes were the most respected. They had preeminence socially, but they could not rule politically. Okay? Villagers were in turn made up of lineages claiming common descent. People commonly descended from people. So to understand why Igbos were a pacifist society, it goes back to their religion. They didn't want to offend Anna and the moral code of the gods by shedding blood needlessly. Why do I say it's okay? Because there's a difference between senseless violence and fucking much needed violence. So when I fucking blank a bunch of fucking rats, don't get it twisted.